so I wanted to start by inviting up our incredible panel to introduce themselves, to make it a little fun. Ladies, I didn't want you to introduce yourself just with, your title or what you do, but take a minute to tell this audience what you'd want the world to really know about you. So in no particular order, let's have you introduce yourselves and welcome. You want to go first, Dechel?
Oh, sure. Thanks so much for having me, Ayesha. I'm Dechel McKillan. I am the founder and creative director of GALERIE.LA. What I would like the world to see is that I'm really just trying to show up and be the change, and have been doing that and finding purpose within my work and within the sustainable fashion movement.
Amazing. Brittany?
Hi, I'm Brittany Sierra, and I'm the founder of the Sustainable Fashion Forum. And what I want the world to know about me. I don't know. I don't know what I'd want them to know. I guess I'd want them to know that that we are here and that we are a force as far as like people of color, and that we can be in this space, and that it's open for all of us.
Amazing. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tahirah. I'm the Fashion and Beauty Features Director at Teen Vogue. I guess, I don't know, what I'd want the world to know about me is that, like, I guess, like, one of my main goals is to kind of, like, continue to tell stories. Like, I'm a storyteller, so that's whether that's, like, on Instagram or with Teen Vogue, or just, like, telling stories and making sure, like, the voices in those stories are their platforms are raised. I feel like that's like my job and like my mission. And then also another part of my mission, or what I want the world to know about me, is kind of just like that I'm really interested in like archiving like Black fashion and Black beauty. I feel like there's not a lot of archived of like what Black fashion looks like, and what Black beauty looks like. There are things, but I feel like that's another part of my mission, is like continue to do that. Yeah.
Amazing. One of the things that I wanted to start with is just putting the elephant in the room, right? That fashion has long been exclusionary. It's a system that has been built on racism. And when we think about sustainable fashion, one of the things I've always been struck by in a lot of the forums and conversations that so many of us have been at for so many years, is that even within the sustainable fashion movement, it's really no different. And I think for our audience, it would be helpful to just start with talking about what are some of the obstacles. It's hard enough to break into the sustainable fashion space, but when you are a Black woman really entering this space, the obstacles are even more stacked. And I know, Dechel, you and I were having this conversation just yesterday. So if I could start with you around even the founding story of GALERIE.LA, is a reminder of what some of these obstacles are. So if you'd be up for sharing that story, I think it would be really good.
Absolutely. So it's so funny that all of this comes full circle to this moment, and how GALERIE.LA was born is that I was a celebrity stylist before even getting the idea of GALERIE.LA, and I was really going through my own conscious journey of wanting to make a bigger impact within fashion. Like, as a stylist, you have a lot of impact on what people actually buy because they're just buying it because it's on a celebrity. And I went through a period where I wanted to get away from styling and just kind of find one company that represented what I believe in, and that came to be like sustainable fashion, and discovered Reformation here in Los Angeles, and really went through a whole interview process with them for their stylist director position. And in the end, I did not get the job, but about 3 weeks later, I noticed that their website completely changed in what looked like some of the creative material that I submitted as a part of this interview process. And I was like, okay, like maybe it's just, a similarity. But then a few weeks later, the producer reached out and she wanted to book the model that I actually used for the photo shoot as a part of the interview process as well. And at that moment, I was like, wait, hey, this is what I do for a living. So of course I'm going to give you her information, but like you just have to know that this is like totally in the wrong. But I never actually thought, you know, it was because like I was Black. But that's a big thing within the fashion industry is like a lot of companies do vet ideas off of Black and brown people without giving them compensation.
Mm-hmm.
Their creative ideas are
Mm-hmm.
always appropriated. So I actually, after this process with Reformation, met a woman, Stephanie, at a volunteer program, and she went through the exact same interview process and didn't get the position, but had to submit all of this information. And we just were like, F that. I remember us being at my office downtown, like, oh no, like they cannot kind of get away with this. And she asked, what would I like to build that we can come together within sustainability and fashion? And that's how GALERIE.LA was born. I was not looking to become a business owner or entrepreneur at that moment, but it was like, we have to create what we want to see in the world, because they're like within sustainable fashion, and this is 2014. I wasn't seeing the brands that I personally wanted to wear or that I would actually put on my celebrity clients. So I wanted to see more fashion forward in the sustainable fashion space.
I mean, I so appreciate you being brave with that story. And to your point, it has all come full circle, you know, seeing some of the news right now with Reformation and just how they've treated their Black employees within stores, and knowing that, you know, from that very difficult moment of having your creative ideas stolen was the beautiful birth of GALERIE.LA. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Tahirah, you know, you've been a stylist, a writer. One of the things that we often hear from some of the young members in our community is how difficult it is as a woman of color, but particularly as a Black writer and stylist, to break into fashion. So would love to hear from you on how you were able to do that.
Yeah, I feel like, well, first of all, I went to like an HBCU, so like that just changed my whole experience about like what it means to like, I guess like have a support system in that way. So I guess like when I did end up moving to New York after college, like I wasn't really like, I don't know, I guess I just feel like I had such a support system and such a like network through my university, Howard, that I feel like I didn't meet a lot of the obstacles that a lot of people do meet. And then when I did end up going into the industry, like just like I feel like the biggest obstacle for me was like staying true to myself. Like I don't know if I had a specific obstacle with like a person, but just like staying true to myself and not like feeding into like what the fashion industry gives a lot of the time, which is often like Mean Girls, often just like a lot of just like being superficial and things like that. And so I feel like having a community and like a support system from college like really helped me stay true to myself and not kind of like feed into like changing myself so that I can fit in with like skinny white girls. Like, so I feel like that really, having that support system really helped me, and like really helped me with my discernment and like, okay, like you're not like, I feel like I had more strength to stand up for myself. Like, oh, actually, like you're not going to talk to me in this way, or actually like you're not going to do this. If this is what you're going to do, I'm going to leave this job. So I feel like I felt super empowered specifically because of my community and where I went to school, that like I wasn't going to be treated a certain way, and I have no problem like standing up for myself, which I feel like a lot of people don't. Like a lot of Black girls don't have that, and that is something that I also understand. So I feel like standing up for myself and like knowing that standing up for myself meant standing up for like other Black women, not just myself, is like something that I feel like was an obstacle, and like it's scary to speak out, but like something that I think I've tried to stay true to. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think it's, you know, so important to be talking about historical Black colleges and the talent pipeline there, because it drives me crazy when you so often hear, oh, well, you know, the industry is full of skinny white girls, to your point, because the talent isn't there. It's like, no, it is. It's just that you're biased when it comes to recruiting. So that's that, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. Like you're just not looking, like you're not doing career fairs at Black colleges, or like, so definitely, I feel like that helped.
That needs to be put part of the manifesto, if you will. Brittany, turning to you, one of the things that I've so enjoyed about the Sustainable Fashion Forum is just how interactive the space is, how it feels accessible to so many. It's very different from other sustainable fashion spaces that are quite exclusionary. And so I'm just wondering, as you built this baby and, in the pandemic, having to move it online and yet having this incredible sold out conference and presence, what were some of the obstacles that you faced, whether it's in getting the talent and brands and founders to be a part of this, and really in doing this amazing job of having a more diverse audience?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because my journey into sustainability wasn't planned. I wasn't planning to have a conference. I wasn't planning to do any of this. I was curious and I wanted to learn more, and so that's initially why I started the conference. But we were very blessed in the very beginning. We had Carrie of Eileen Fisher. She's no longer with the company, but she was one of like the first people that that was a part of the forum when our very first year. And I think like from her being a part of that, and then the next year Whitney being a part of it, and then the trajectory of how quickly the conference grew, I haven't really faced a lot of obstacles in getting folks to participate, which has been a huge blessing. For the most part, if I ask someone, they'll say yes, but I think it's also because how fast it's grown, and so we have that track record. What I find difficult is getting people of color to speak at the conference, and also brands sending people of color. I can think of one time in particular where we had to go through so much to get this woman to be able to come to the conference, whereas and they kept trying to send someone else, but I specifically wanted her. And I think that has been some of the challenge of having it be a little bit more diverse as far as the folks that are coming and the folks that are speaking. I think another thing too, for a long time, I didn't want anyone to know that I was behind the conference. I didn't want them to know that it was a Black woman for a lot of reasons. And I've actually since been thinking a lot about that and why I didn't want them to know. But I think like at the time, I thought it was because I wanted people to gravitate towards this platform genuinely because of the content or because of the conversations or because of the speakers or because, the funny memes that we put up or the information. I wanted them to come because it's a good resource, not because of a face behind it or a person behind it. But I think also when I'm being honest and thinking about truly why I didn't want that, I think it's also because I'm a woman of color. And I didn't want them to come to the platform and have judgments or thoughts about what they thought this platform was going to be. I wanted them to just have this authentic, or I don't even know if it's authentic. I just wanted them to like see the platform and enjoy it for what it is, or not enjoy it, and whatever conclusion they come to. I want it to just be based on this platform, not a person. So when I'm honestly like, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot personally, and so my like thoughts on that aren't quite clear because I'm still thinking and processing of why is it that I didn't want people to know, and why did I want to hide behind the name. So I don't know if that answers the question. But.
No, I mean, this is an opportunity for us to also have the raw conversations. And I think for people listening in to say, if you had known that a Black woman is behind that, well, now is the time for you to actually support the conference even more going forward, And it's not to say that you have to have all the answers, but for us to have these conversations on this is how the industry has presented itself, historically. Yeah. It is that sustainable fashion. There's a very particular image that comes to mind, and we're here to change that paradigm. And so, I'm taking a lot from this obstacle conversation, first of all, recruit from historically Black colleges, find your community, show up in your power. So I really appreciate that. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about how the industry has or has not shown up in this moment. My background in this work is really more on the production side. When COVID-19 happened, we were hearing from workers in Haiti and Ethiopia and Bangladesh that, brands were not paying up. And then very quickly, as the industry started to contract, we were also hearing terrible stories from Black employees in warehouses and in retail spaces saying, the industry is turning their back on us at a time when workers need them most. And then very quickly, when, here we are 400 years later, and people are like, okay, this country's finally having a reckoning, and we can all say it loudly and proudly that Black Lives Matter, you suddenly had Instagram squares of companies saying, oh, we stand in solidarity with racial justice. And our first instinct was like, no, no, no. You don't just get to say that. You need to actually show that with your actions. And so I'm curious, Brittany, as you're thinking of brands that you have historically given a platform to, or you've engaged with, are there particular brands that you're saying, hey, you really did show up, and others where you feel that we should be calling them out?
Yeah, I can think of one brand in particular that I saw their square and what they did for Black Lives Matter, and it actually frustrated me because I had a very interesting experience with this company. It's a huge company. Everybody knows this company, and
you should feel free to name the company if you're comfortable. No holds barred conversation.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I'll be honest. It was with Nike, and the experience that I had with them, it wasn't a good one. And them knowing the background of like the conference and knowing the background of me and my team and us trying to build something, there was an instance where there was supposed to be support, and then all of a sudden it was taken away, and then it was said that because they didn't have the resources as who they are, and it was really detrimental to SFF. And so I just thought it was interesting for them to say, we support, we're here, but Nike is right here in Portland, the Sustainable Fashion Forum is right here in Portland, and the situation was not the best. So that actually frustrated me a bit when I saw that. And I mean, it's interesting too to see all these brands that are now saying things, and then the stories are coming out of how they're actually treating people. It's disheartening, but I hope that from it actual change happens, and that for instance, like with me, as I was saying before, for us, we'd love to have more people of color speak at the conference who are represented by or who are representing these brands, and so it'd be great for them to hire folks of color, highest levels, to be able to participate in these types of things and have their voice heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nike is an interesting example in that, the marketing has been very slick. And, one of the things that we've really been talking to our community about is this is not the time to commoditize Black Lives Matter, but to show action. And so I know, Tahirah, you have been, very vocal on your platform, talking about asking your community to hold brands accountable, to make sure that they're taking action. Are there particular brands that jump to your mind that have engaged with you properly or not engaged properly? And I think a follow-up to that question is, what advice would you have for people that are wanting to hold brands accountable on how they should do that?
Yeah, I think I've definitely been commenting on brands' Instagrams, okay, this is great, but what else are you doing? I feel like that's my main thing. It's okay, sure, you can donate $1 million to whoever, and that's a tax write-off for your company essentially. And what else are you doing? Great, amazing. You gave $1 million to the same organizations that everyone else is giving brand money to. So I think one of my main things with brands is okay, sure, give money to Black Lives Matter, but what are you doing within your industry? I think a lot of people think reparations is just about money, but it's about changing power structures. And so that means you need to give opportunities to Black people specifically. And I don't mean hiring an assistant, and I don't mean hiring an editor. I mean who's on your board. I mean creating guidelines. I think that to me is so much more important than you just writing $1 million check, because after that you're throwing money at the situation, and you're not forcing yourself as a company to be directly involved and making a shift, a power balance shift, which is what I think reparations is. And I think one of the companies that has done really well is I was really, really proud of Glossier. I have a couple friends who work there. I think their initiative was great. They donated $500,000 to to Black social justice organizations, but then they also like did something within their own industry, which is creating grants for Black businesses. And like for a beauty brand to like, that's huge to give like grants to Black businesses and like not worry about competition or like set, like, you know what I mean? I think like that's such a big deal to me. So I think when I'm looking at brands, I'm looking at, okay, like I personally don't care if you posted a Black square on Instagram. Like I want to know like, what are you doing within your organization? And that to me is like, sure, you can say you're doing these things, but I think because like a lot of brands, like I think it's ridiculous for brands to expect us to trust that they're doing the right thing when they haven't done the right thing for years. So it's like, right. I need to see your numbers. I need to see what you're doing. I need a lot of transparency for me to like believe that you're doing these things. So I think like that's my number one thing. Like, what else are you doing? I mean, I've literally been like, brands are emailing me like, hey, like our founder donated money to Black Lives Matter. And I'll email back like, okay, cool. Well, you're in the wellness space. What are you doing for Black women in wellness? Amazing. You're in the beauty space. What are you doing? And I'll send them a list of organizations. Like that's something I don't mind doing. And I think like they should be small local organizations. Like don't donate to where everyone else is donating. Do your research, because that to me just shows that you really care. So I think like that is me holding brands accountable. And not being afraid to be like, this isn't enough for me. Yeah.
And there's so much power in what you said, right? This is not a moment for PR and slick marketing. What we don't want is charity, and that reparations is about a change in power structure. And so it sounds to me your advice is for anyone asking brands about accountability, it's like, well, show me not, you know, your whatever $1 million to NAACP, but actually charity is all very good. We want you to keep doing that. Yeah. Like, show me photos of your executives, show me photos of your middle management, show me how you're changing essentially and elevating Black voices within your company.
Right.
So Dechel, you know, one of the things that you do, which whenever I've been to the GALERIE.LA store, it's so soothing as you walk into this tightly curated, really stylish curation of a sustainable product. And I'm curious, as you think about, you know, how have you historically vetted that product? And are you thinking in the current context around, you know, when it comes to elevating Black businesses, when it comes to be thinking about which brands are accountable or not, how will that show up within GALERIE.LA?
Yes, you know, even like this has affected how I look at the space that I'm creating, because I always just, you know, thought it was enough to be a Black woman. The majority of the brands that we carry are actually founded by women. And we do have a variety and like diverse group of brands, but I don't have enough Black owned brands. And that actually was a problem for me to just like kind of have that. And I just have discovered so many more brands in this time. And so, you know, we need to just kind of take that, like as a retailer, I want to take that and, you know, just integrate it a little bit more into what I'm doing. Because I really do see GALERIE.LA growing as to, you know, a one-stop shop. I think I'm going to develop a badge that's just Black owned on our site as well, just so we can continue to create that transparency. I do believe that if people want to support, like a great way is through supporting, you know, women, especially of color, and their businesses and who they will hire and what that actually creates. Because all of the interns that I've hired at GALERIE.LA are like Black, or they're brown, or they're a minority. And, you know, they've had such horrible experiences going to bigger sustainable fashion companies that don't hire them. So it's, you know, it's up to us to create these spaces. And so I'm kind of committed right now to have more Black owned businesses that are sustainable and fit our ethos as well.
Are they?
Can I say something? Oh.
Yeah, please do.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I fully, I second that. Like with the conference, you know, like, so I'm women of color, obviously, and my team, we're all women of color. There's 3 of us. We're all women of color, and it's interesting because for us to have, you know, these larger brands participate in the conference, it's like it's a big deal, you know, like as a person of color, you know, and having like a conference this size, like it feels really good to have these brands participate. But then, from the outside looking in, when you see the folks that attend and you see the people that are sitting on the stage, it doesn't reflect our actual team. And that's something that we've been thinking about a lot. And honestly, I think that as an entrepreneur, you have so many things that you're trying to do at one time, and you have so many balls and so many things that you're trying to juggle and just trying to stay afloat, especially with COVID-19, like, and the coronavirus and all this stuff, like, just trying to stay afloat and just trying to like figure out the next moves. And I think that this Black Lives Matter movement, even for me, was like an eye opener of like, how can we get more people of color in the door? How can we have more people of color attend the event? And I noticed that when I put that my name at the top of the Instagram handle, and the more that people are seeing that there's a person of color behind it, I've noticed that there's a lot more engagement from people of color on our platforms and on our, and on our Instagram specifically. And I think like, for me, it's almost like I didn't even think about that. I'm just like, it's founded by a Black woman, like, there you go, but then I'm like, wait, no, like, people need to actually see, because no one knows that there's a Black person behind this. Nobody knows that there is a team of Black and folks behind the scenes. Nobody knows that. And so I second that, Dechel. Like, that's something that we've been thinking about a lot, of how we can make it more diverse as far as like the speakers, but then also the people that attend, and making people feel comfortable. Because like my entrance into this wasn't the direct route, like I kind of took like a side street to get here. And so, hearing about how difficult it is to break into the industry, it feels almost as like it's I have an obligation to like make space for other people, when I didn't realize that that was something that I was like, I wasn't signing up to do that, but in being in this space, it's something that needs to happen in order to bring more people of color in.
Yeah, I'm just gonna like piggyback off of Brittany and Dechel. I agree. I feel like just like, how have you held the industry accountable? I think like part of that is also holding yourself accountable. I feel like I've definitely been doing that with like, okay, like how many Black photographers are we hiring at Teen Vogue? Like how many like just like internal, or like doing some internal reflection, like, because it's not just like, I guess like it's not just white people's problem. I guess like I don't know if that makes sense. Like looking within yourself as well, like, okay, like even like me, I'm like, oh, I don't really buy, like I do buy from Black brands, but I'm like, there's so many that I don't, and just figuring out even like what products can I be adding in my home on an everyday basis, like even going from like my personal life and then spreading that into work, like holding myself accountable if I'm going to ask other people to be accountable as well. So like I totally agree with this.
And I think,
actually, if I could just, there's a follow-up question here on the chat for Tahirah, which is around, Condé Nast, and whether or not you have been able to hold them accountable in their diversity, recruitment, and inclusion efforts. I think I would reframe that question a little bit, because I think part of this is also about not putting all the onus on Black people to fix an industry that has historically done all this. So curious about even if there are efforts within Condé Nast or for the community listening in to be able to be thinking about how are they ways, especially with Teen Vogue being so different from the other magazines.
Definitely working at Teen Vogue is like living in a bubble at Condé Nast, specifically because it's like our editor-in-chief is a Black woman, our executive editor, South Asian, I'm Black, our entertainment director is Black. Michelle, who works on my team, is Asian. Like there's so much like diversity within Teen Vogue already that it just like, it feels like we live in a bubble. So when people talk about it, I'm like, okay, but like that's not my day to day. But I understand like that the bigger problem with Condé Nast in general is like diversity, and we have been doing like town hall meetings, which are interesting about diversity, and definitely just like I feel like whenever we're looking to hire people, we definitely just make sure there's a diverse pool. I don't have a lot of like power as far as like what Condé Nast is doing in general, but I am a part of those conversations and like making sure we're like talking about things and like holding them accountable. And I think like in the near future there'll be a lot of like other ways that we are able to hold Condé Nast accountable, which I can't really talk about in this chat, but yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't mean to cut you off, Brittany. It was just a follow-up question, but please go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. No, it's okay. I'm trying to remember.
I mean, I think, it's interesting just to follow up with this thread of, okay, so a lot of companies, even beyond the donations, are now hosting town halls. I've suddenly seen an uptick in, diversity and inclusion officers. But we know that when it comes to systemic racism, what you have to do is be looking at the power structures up and down, right? And you can't be one and done by hiring one diversity and inclusion officer, even if that is an executive position. Wondering, it seems like there's questions coming in around everyone, whichever organizations they work within. What is some of the advice we would give them on holding their brands or their employers more accountable? What should be the questions beyond hire more, go to historically Black colleges? Other ideas and thoughts?
I was thinking that if you are in a position where, I don't know, like if you're casting, for something, asking the questions of like, okay, how many people of color are we gonna have? Making sure that someone is speaking up in those spaces for the overall goal, if that's what you want to do. I also think that, supporting others, like I'm thinking specifically about when I was wanting to get that woman of color on our panel and just all the drama that it was to get her to speak. People that are allies are in that space, they can vouch and say, yeah, I totally think that she should go, instead of, oh yeah, well maybe we should have someone who's higher up, or maybe we should, like vouching for that person, saying, no, she would be great, she'd be awesome, she can speak to this. If there are certain things that we want her to talk about, then we can give her those prep notes, but she should totally do this. I think supporting in those ways and calling attention to the lack in those spaces is important. Yeah.
Thank you. It seems like our audience is really desperate to engage with all of you. So I could talk to you all day, but I'm not going to be selfish here. So one of the questions coming in is, Riley, who is part of a CSR community, so corporate responsibility community here in San Francisco. And, she's saying, look, we're 5 white women. We need diverse members, but I'm unsure of how best to make this happen. I've already put out a call for others to volunteer, but I feel awkward reaching out directly. Do you have any advice on how I should move forward?
I don't know the actual names, but there are people that are like specifically recruiting for like Black talent, and I would probably go that route of where you can actually find the talent to connect you with who, and just put it out on, a call, like what you're looking for, like we've seen the power of the internet work so fast, and it's just like use it to your advantage to actually find who you're looking for.
And, I really appreciate this notion of someone on the chat saying, look, I'm feeling awkward, but I think part of this is also us sitting in our discomfort and not asking, the Black community that already has so many obstacles stacked against you and breaking into the sustainable fashion space, to then say, okay, and now fix all these problems, right? So it's to say, be brave, make the ask, and see what comes. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah.
Tahirah?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I think like one of the things that like oddly like banks do, like, which suck in general because capitalism sucks, but like who's at HBCU recruiting every single year? Banking. Like they're at HBC. Like a lot of more like bigger corporate companies are at HBCUs every single year during career fairs. So I feel like for me, I would say getting in contact with like those people. They're like very like eligible people, I'm sure, at like the many HBCUs. So like look up a list of HBCUs, start reaching out to them, their career departments, and I'm sure they will send you a lot of applications or what you need, or any kind of like HBCU alumni association that you can reach out to. I feel like that's another like great way. Like clearly I'm like pro HBCU, but like that's kind of where you can find a lot of people. So yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's no like cheat sheet or like,
right.
Like some place that's just gonna have like all of those answers. I think you're gonna have to look for them.
Yeah, but also to make the ask, right? And not to feel awkward in the ask, because this is the time
totally.
for all of us to be taking action rather than putting the burden. on others. So there's a question from JL, and she wants to know, outside of just when we are thinking about holding companies accountable and that we like or we buy from, how should we be thinking about accountability in their actions for more diversity? So I think the question, and I'm rereading it to make sure, to have holding companies that we work for. So so for everyone on this call, when they're particularly partnering with brands or they're working with certain brands, what should be the questions they should be asking to hold them more accountable to their commitments to diversity? So we talked, I know one idea was around board, right? Show me photos of your board, or show me photos of your executives, other ideas.
Yeah, asking folk who's going to be involved in the project. So if like you're partnering with someone, you can say, okay, cool. Like, so, how many of these people are someone of color, or are we going to hire, I'd like to hire a Black photographer, or I'd like to hire Black models, or I think that just being assertive in what it is that you want to see, when you're working with these companies, and asking them specifically, like, okay, so like I know someone was asking me, okay, yeah, I'd love to speak on the panel, but how many other people on this panel are going to be of color? That's a great way to bring that up. I'd love to do X, Y, and Z, but how about we bring this person? This person would be great for this campaign. I think those are some ways that you can continue to hold people accountable after, it dies down of posting Black squares and all of that, to continue to ask those questions and bring it up. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, don't let it die down after this, time passes and then no one talks about it again. I think that there needs to continuously be conversations of who's in the room, why aren't these people in the room? We should ask them to be in the room. Okay, that's great that we have these 3, let's have more. I think that's a good way.
This can't be a one and done conversation.
Yeah, it's continuous. That's the only way that we're going to have true change. This is an awesome movement. It's huge. It's great, but we just need to keep it going.
Keep it going, exactly. So I think to that end, so there's a question here about, do you have any favorite Black sustainable fashion professionals or authors that you follow, particular books or resources that you'd have as suggestions for the audience? It could be Instagram handles, it could be books, it could be thought leaders in this space. The 3 of you, obviously.
Yes, I think that even now has created that space to just kind of look specifically for that. And I think like there's so much floating around the internet. You could probably look at anyone's list or like something. And so I'm gonna say, like, I think, like you said, it's not up to us to like provide that information. You kind of have to seek it out. And that's just like the same thing that I have to do to seek out ethical brands. Like I have to do the research, and then you find out who speaks to you. There's so many lists, there's so many books, there's like all of those things already out there.
Don't make it Dechelle's problem to school.
Yeah,
louder.
I don't think that that's like a problem, but I think like you got to do a little bit of work and find what resonates for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've really been enjoying. I've really been enjoying Leah Thomas. I think she's Green Gal Leah on Instagram. But she is responsible for the intersectional environmentalism, and I've been learning a lot from her, a lot. Even as a Black woman, I've been doing a ton, so I really enjoy her. So I would encourage you to check her out.
Wonderful. She talks a lot about intersectionality between the environmental movement and thinking about equity, and just how all of these issues are connected.
Yeah, she's brilliant. I really enjoy her.
So I have a question here around, it's a big meta question, ladies. So Tyler wants to know, that if you succeed under capitalism, it's something that she read that resonated with her. If you're succeeding under capitalism, then you can't really be ethical or sustainable. And so this idea is that, companies in themselves are really focused on redistribution of wealth. I guess the very system in itself is not sustainable. It's not ethical. And I guess in many ways racist, right? It's working for a few and not very many. And so how do you think about holding this industry accountable when the entire system is basically built on oppression?
Mm.
I told you it was a big one.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's almost like whatever area you're in, you have to, continue to break down those parts. I think like even tackling the fashion industry, it's huge. There's it's a huge supply chain. So we have to just continue to like ask those questions. And I think the reason like you have, small businesses, you really see them doing it a little bit different. And I see like GALERIE.LA compared to like another sustainable fashion platform that might have like millions of investment. And then, they quickly are not sustainable with that type of investment, and you have to continue to raise. So it's like really, changing each area of the supply chain and really what it looks like, and making sure that that money is distributed to like the people that it needs to go to.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people think like capitalism is like abolishing all businesses, but I don't think like that's what it is. I think it's like more so like who is abusing the livelihood of the people and who has all this power, and like that needs to be distributed. But I don't think that means like that you support capitalism. I think once it's distributed, then that should go to like the right people and smaller businesses. And I also think like businesses in general need to like change their expectations. Like, why do you need to make $1 billion in a year? Or why do you have these like high expectations? Or why do you have like, that also needs to be like reevaluated in that way. Like, you don't need to make this amount of money, or you don't need to like produce these many amounts of clothes. So I think like forcing bigger brands to change their mindset and how they produce things. But then I also think it's like redistributing that wealth to smaller brands who already have the mindset and who already don't want to take over the world. Like that should never, if that's the goal of your business, like I don't want to like support it, because like, yeah, I think capitalism isn't abolishing all businesses, but it is like changing the mindset of what a business means. So
the type of growth model we know is something that our earth can't sustain, and it certainly doesn't work for most people, right? So there is this tension between scale and sustainability, growth and sustainability. Yeah.
Totally.
So we have a question from Kelly, who said, look, we're a sustainable fashion nonprofit. We have a very diverse board of different age and gender and race and sexuality, but she's being honest to say we have no Black members. Would it seem inauthentic if I were to reach out and now say we need to have a Black member on our board? And I guess the question here is that, of course, we take into account qualifications and contributions to the board, but I don't want people to think that we're simply reaching out, essentially for tokenism or because of the color of their skin. So what do you think? Do we make it specific when it comes to the ask of have more Black members? I mean, I have thoughts on this, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
I think that like, oh.
No.
I was going to say, I think that, yes, it will look like that, but that doesn't mean don't do it. I think that do it and continue doing it. And that's how it looks authentic and doesn't look like you're just doing it for this moment. So I think, first off, it's going to feel a little weird, and you're going to be curious about if people are going to be viewing this that way, but that doesn't matter because it still needs to happen. There still should be people of color involved. So yeah, I'd say it might be uncomfortable, kind of what we said before. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but still do it and continue to do it afterwards. That's my thought.
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions that have come about like reaching out and like, would it be weird, is more so like it might feel awkward for you, and it's gonna feel awkward for you, but like
good, right? Let's say it's good.
And the person that you reach out to is gonna be happy. You know what I mean? I'm sure that they would love to have that opportunity. So even if it's like awkward and weird, I think that right now a lot of things are awkward and weird, and they're gonna be awkward and weird until it becomes the norm and until it becomes something that we're not. It's a no-brainer, So I think in that we're just gonna have to push through the weird and awkward and uncomfortable until we get to a place where we want to be.
Yeah. Like this moment calls for action. And so
yeah.
I think it's great when you can take action despite like the feelings. But that's what like I think I want to see. Don't just take action and just hire someone, but like take action to hire the right person that is like a Black person that you can have their voice within your community.
And also like
Yeah.
listen to them when like don't just hire someone just because you want like a face, like actually listen to like what they want to do, not just like, oh, we're gonna hire you and this is our mission. It's like, we're gonna hire you, what's wrong with our mission? Like that's what I think is like the right move for me.
Yeah.
It's not about tokenism, one and done. You know, I think when Dechel and I were talking earlier, it was reflecting on a conversation we've heard from some Black members of our community, just saying how tired they are of colleagues awkwardly reaching out and saying, can we talk about racism? And for a lot of them, they're like, look, we know and have been living racism for 400 years. We don't want to talk about it. What we want you to do is to actually do something. You know, when you're hiring, when you're in these town halls, we want you to ask the difficult questions. We want you to put money behind your actions. Don't feel, if you feel awkward, read up on your own dime. Don't ask us to talk to you about racism. Is that fair? It's more about action at this point.
Yeah.
I think it definitely goes both ways, but yes, I want to see action. And I think like when people come and they're like, oh, can you like speak on this? Can you do this? And I'm like, you know, no, like in so many ways, because like I've just been here the whole time. And so I think it's like, you know, be able to have the conversations, and like when you are in spaces and you see that this, you know, is happening, create action, like hire people, spend your dollars, you know, call things out. Like it's so important.
Yeah. You know, and I hear someone, Karen, I really appreciate your comment here on the chat saying lean into the discomfort. You know, I've been so heartened, the communities I work in, you know, in Bangladesh, for example, workers have been protesting for wages going back to March, have been, you know, driven to the brink of starvation as the industries turned their back on them. But we had so many union leaders from Bangladesh over the last week hold up signs saying Black Lives Matter and standing in solidarity with everything that's happening here in our country.
Wow.
And so it's to say, you know, I really do see this as a moment of also solidarity across workers, whether retail or a warehouse or on the factory floor. And so for all of us also to say, what does real allyship, what does real solidarity look like? So there's a lot more questions, but, you know, tomorrow is Juneteenth. And I want to pivot the conversation to think about a little bit more of joy in your lives. I know historically maybe there would have been a celebration within the Black communities. Now here we are, you know, sheltering in place in these difficult times, and maybe we can't do that. But what I want to hear from each of you as we're closing out here is, you know, moments of joy and what keeps you hopeful. Because, you know, the industry, the fashion industry in itself is going through a very difficult time. You know, obviously these issues around equity and justice, the work in some ways should have started many years ago, but will go on. Are there particular things where you're like, this is why I stay hopeful and I keep at it?
Yeah, well, I must say, like, even in this very difficult moment, like as a business owner, like of a physical space, which I feel like sometimes I am in my own like little bubble living in LA. It's so diverse. Like everyone comes into the store. We have panels and conversation with everyone, but you know, having to take that to an online space, it's actually kind of forced me to show like, this is what our editorials are at GALERIE.LA, which really represents diversity, and kind of taking that online and just having the conversation a little bit more. Like maybe we've done it in the space, but now it can be like done with our customers. I've seen good use of technology. We've had so many more followers, newsletter subscribers, sales within this time. So it's like really what we're doing here is amplifying the voices, and amplifying our voices in the sustainable fashion space really creates that for, you know, the other brands that are employing, you know, the Black and brown minority people and giving them fair wages. So it's all like circular.
Tahirah, I know that, you know, you run a really fun Black film fashion account where you show a lot of iconic looks from Black films. You know, curious what made you launch that, and if there are particular pieces that you've written for Teen Vogue that you're really proud of.
I think like when I get like super sad, I think one of the things I do is like either like read words from Black women or watch Black movies. And so it was like literally when I got laid off from a job, I was like spending my weeks just watching Black movies. And I'm like, oh, these movies are so stylish. Like I should just like, it was literally just like, oh, this seems fun. I don't have a job. Like I want to do this. So that's kind of how I started it. And then I was like, oh no, like there's just a lot of like talk about like, even when you like go on YouTube and you like look at the breakdown of movies, like it's mostly just like white movies that I've seen that are like, whatever, they're great. But it's like, okay, but like, can we do a breakdown of like Love and Basketball? What about Baps? Like, what about all, this is how like I grew up. And I guess like, I want to like kind of like share that with the world. And it's not just how I grew up, it's how a lot of people grew up. So just having that, again, like creating that community where like people can come and like look at looks, or like we're breaking down like fashion looks from movies. I think that that is like super important, and super important to, again, like archiving like Black history, aside from just like movements and protests, but also just like style and beauty and all of those things, which is really important to me. And I guess like favorite things, I feel like my entry point into sustainability in general was actually a piece that I wrote at Lenny. Like the publication was closing, and I got to go to Mexico and see like these women who are researching coral reefs and like how they're deteriorating. And one of the things I got to do was like go night snorkeling and like see what the coral reefs kind of looked like how they were deteriorating and what they were supposed to look like. And then also at that time, I saw like the beaches were just like changing. They had like things from the, I forgot what it's called now, which I should know, but like things from the ocean were just like coming to the surface. And so instead of it looking like a beach, it just had all these like smelly, like not seaweed, I'll link the article, but they had all these things, and like all the beaches in Mexico were starting to look like that. So I feel like me being able to see how the world was deteriorating was like, I don't know, just like a big thing for me. And so that kind of just like started my idea. And then I think like at Teen Vogue, one of the things I'm super proud of is our fashion crisis package that ran in February. And we actually like got an honorable mention award at Connie Nast for it. But it was cool because it was just like, okay, like I think like one of the my issues with the talk around like media and sustainability is like always like put on like, don't buy this, you should buy this. And I'm like, okay, but you're still talking about like consumption. Like, so let's talk about like, why are people buying these things? Like, what is it like to be a plus size fashion blogger who's also sustainable? What is it like? So I guess like making it palatable to like our audience, which is young, but also like not only being like, here are 10 sustainable brands you should shop, or like swap out these beauty products. And I'm like, okay, but you're still telling people to buy. And you're like, I think that also like kind of alienates people who want to get into it. So giving them like easy entry points, like, okay, like you shop at Zara, that doesn't mean you're a terrible person. Like, what is that? Like, you know, so I think like that is something that I think at Teen Vogue. So I would say like fashion crisis and like my coral reef article. Yeah.
Wonderful. And how about you, Brittany? You know, you've had so many conversations within the sustainable fashion space. Have there been particular ones that you've gone back to that keep you joyful and hopeful?
So I have two things that are keeping me happy, and one isn't related to sustainable fashion. It's actually running. So I started running when everything closed down, and I found that it has been really helpful for me. It makes me feel a lot better, you know, especially with so much going on and seeing so many things on the internet. It makes me feel really, really good. And so that has been awesome. But then coupled with that, I think the community, the Sustainable Fashion Forums community is what gives me a lot of hope and joy, to be honest, because it is really hard to put on this conference, especially having such a small team. It's really, really hard. And like what a lot of people don't know is that from the outside, it looks like the forum just kind of like blew up overnight. But there are a lot of long nights. There were a lot of not paying my bills. There was a lot of like stuff that had to happen in order to get to this point now. And it's exhausting. And especially, you know, with the virus and not knowing like what's going to happen as far as conferences and being able to get together, it's hard. And then also on top of it, Black Lives Matter stuff, and just so much is going on. And I've often thought like, man, like, should I even be doing this? Like, should I keep going with this? Like, I don't know. But I think that the community is what really, really brings me joy, and seeing people's messages of how, you know, like our approach to sustainability of not trying to like, you know, bang you over the head with this information, but kind of being a more fun and more inviting space, the messages that I've gotten from people of just how we've helped them, how we've, you know, encouraged them, all of that is what really keeps me going. As I said before, I didn't start the conference to have a conference. I started it because I wanted to bring people together. And so I think that has been like going back to that and seeing those messages and seeing those people and seeing people have conversations amongst themselves on our platform has given me a lot of joy and a lot of hope and made me feel, you know, like, okay, it's hard, it's difficult, like I'm not sure our next move, but I'm gonna keep going. So that
we
and
need
then running
to keep going.
yeah.
So we're right at the
I know.
hour. We're right at the hour, but you know, this is about elevating Black voices. We've talked so many ways about assuring that, you know, this is not a one and done conversation. So very quickly, I would love for you all to list, you know, 1, 2, 3 ways that this community, we have over 100 people who are a part of this webinar. We're also live streaming it. How can they support you? So obviously shop at Galerie.LA.
Our handle is there underneath my name and picture. You can shop Galerie.LA directly online or through Instagram. And, you know, subscribe to our newsletter, share with friends. Like, I feel like the internet has been beating the Instagram algorithm, so continue to do that because it is challenging right now. I'm kind of like with Brittany of like, I don't know what the future really looks like for a retail space or even what I'm building. So yeah, like show that love, keep the things that you want to see in the world going, these Black businesses, because it's often a little more challenging to just get our ideas off the ground. So thank you.
Brittany?
Yeah, I would say for us, a huge thing is social currency. So if you're engaging with us on Instagram, commenting, sharing, all of that, that's really helpful for me in being able to like get brands and folks to be a part of it. I would also say if you represent a company that is able to financially support, that would be amazing because the Sustainable Fashion Forum is currently not sponsored in any way, and it would be great to be able to get my team paid. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be awesome.
And last but not least, Tahirah?
I think, yeah, if you want to follow my Black film fashion account,
It's very fun and very soothing. I can attest to that.
And I think I'm going to start a newsletter next month called On Beauty, named after like the Zadie Smith book, but just about like fashion, beauty, and consumption. And then like personally, it would be important for me, that's not about me. It's like, if you support it, there are like 3 organizations that I thought of for this, for this panel. One is Black Art Futures Fund, which is, after this I can like link it on my Instagram, but Black Art Futures Fund basically like provides grants to small nonprofit organizations that specifically like are for elevating Black arts and like the Black art community. And then another one is Black Women's Blueprint, which is basically an organization that kind of just like is fighting for liberation for Black women, which is like, why would you not support that, you know? And then the last one is Mosaic Youth Theater. I'm from Detroit, so it's like basically just like a youth theater. It was created once like the Detroit school system like kind of defunded the arts programs, and they created that like a long time ago. But it's something that like a lot of kids that I grew up with went to. It's still around, and it's just like teaching Black kids like theater, writing, acting. And so those are like my three things. And I can definitely link them in my Instagram or in this chat.
Amazing. And so, you know, one very direct call to action for everyone listening is to follow all of you incredible women. We have your Instagram handles right here. I want to thank everyone so much for giving us this time. You know, our Instagram handle is Remake Our World. And so if you want to keep up with this series and these conversations, we at Remake firmly committed and always do yesterday, today, and tomorrow that Black Lives Matter. The next in this series, we're going to be talking to Black entrepreneurs along with some VCs about unlocking money, both in terms of thinking about seed capital, but also longer term investment in Black businesses. So that'll be in 2 weeks. We'll put that information on our Instagram. Please join me in thanking, just imagine they're all clapping, they're standing on their feet. Brittany, Tahirah, and Dechel, I adore you guys and I so appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. All right. Have a good rest of your day.